I'm waiting for the recording. Forum with the candidates for the District 3 of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. I am Claire Toutant, and I am the chair of the Midcoast Community Council, who is sponsoring this event. This recording will be available on the websites of the Midcoast Community Council and of the League of Women Voters after the meeting. I want to thank the candidates, our tech manager and MCC Vice Chair Greg Dieguez, the League of Women Voters, who are our moderators, and mostly the residents of the Coast Side who are here this evening. Our speaking for Coast Siders is more effective when our government officials are interested in listening to us. With that, I will turn this over to the League of Women Voters to moderate the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome and good evening. I'm Kathy Wheeler, a member of the League of Women Voters of North and Central San Mateo County, and I will be your moderator tonight for this District 3 San Mateo Board of Supervisors Candidate Forum. And I want to thank the Midcoast Community Council for sponsoring this forum tonight. First of all, I have some announcements. Virtual candidate forums have some unique features, but we think we've designed a process for using the conferencing apps that will give everyone a good experience and follow the League's long-standing and well-received process. There is a question gatherer, Margie Gator from the League, a timer, Carolyn Belknap, and the moderator, myself, Kathy Wheeler, for this candidate forum. The question gatherer's job is to collect the questions via Zoom or via the email address, and I will give you that address in a few more sentences. The timer's role tonight is to monitor the timer and alert the candidates with signs that their time is expiring. Video for the audience is turned off by default. The only video that is enabled is for the candidates, the moderator, the question gatherer, and the question gatherer. And we've chosen that Margie does not have to show us her pretty face tonight. The conferencing app is set up so that you are automatically muted, also that your video is turned off. This is to allow the candidates to speak without interruption. We urge everyone to submit questions. You can do this in two ways. First, we have an email. Carolyn, if you can put up that sign. It's the League of, so this is an acronym, League of Women Voters, North Central San Mateo County. So lwvncsmc.questions@gmail.com. Or in the chat function, you can select Margie Gator and you can send her the question via chat. That's the other way you can do this. No campaign literature or other material is permitted within the meeting, and that's the main reason why we turned the video off. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization of both men and women whose purpose is to promote active and informed participation in government. We appreciate the interests and efforts of our city governments and other civic-minded groups in presenting events that increase voters' knowledge about the candidates and the issues. The purpose of a candidate forum is to provide an opportunity for all the candidates to be heard at one time and to be questioned by you, the audience. We hope that by bringing the candidates and voters together face-to-face, voters will be better informed and will make wise decisions when they vote. We appreciate your interest in coming out to learn more about the candidates. And I want to make one thing clear here. In the flyers that we sent out about this event, we included the Gmail address for questions, and we've been receiving questions there, and I have incorporated those questions tonight. And I think we also replied to everyone who sent in a question.
Kathy, you went on mute.
Sorry about that. That was accidental, I think. Tonight, you will hear from the candidates for the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, District 3. There are 4 candidates for 1 seat. The term of office is 4 years. The top 2 vote-getting candidates will move on to the main election unless one candidate receives 50% of the vote plus 1 additional vote, in which case that candidate will be your elected District 3 supervisor. The candidates in alphabetical order are Stephen Booker, Virginia Chang, Ray Mueller, and Laura Parmer-Lohan. Unfortunately, Stephen Booker is not able to attend tonight. We have given him the option to send us a written candidate statement, but we have not received such. We'll continue. I'm actually willing to continue to monitor email to see if he sends it, and if it's received during the course of the event tonight, I'll read it at the end. So, explanation of the ground rules, and they're pretty simple. The rules of the forum are as follows. The opening statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Then we'll have a question period for approximately 45 to 50 minutes, depending upon, how efficient we're being. And during that question period, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer. All candidates will have an equal time to speak to the question, even if the question is addressed to only one candidate. Closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Again, our timekeeper is Carolyn Belkner. When basically her job is to alert the candidates how much time they have left. So you will see her raising signs. 1 minute for the candidate statements, 30 seconds for questions and for statements. And then finally, if they're being pretty verbose, we'll ask them to stop. And, basically you can finish the sentence. We're not going to allow you to complete a paragraph. Let's see, where are we at here? All questions come to the moderator. And the way we do this, Margie is basically the receiver of the questions. And then she sends those questions on to me, and we have a texting app that we use to do that. I've already gotten a number of questions. Try to make these as broad as possible and applicable to particularly the coast side here in San Mateo County. It's interesting to note that both Margie, myself, and Carolyn, we all live in Half Moon Bay, okay? And that's sort of a happy accident for this particular candidate forum because we do candidate forums for the entire county. And we'll cover a variety of topics. Seldom have time to answer all the questions, but I will be forwarding questions. I think it's interesting to forward extra questions to the candidates, so at least they know what you guys are thinking about out there. Again, and I'm going to repeat again. So Carolyn, if you can put up the email address for where to send your questions. So you can jot that down if you like, or you can use the chat function. And please indicate Margie Gator when you do your chat. So I think we are ready for opening statements. And prior to the start of this forum, we drew lots to determine the order of the candidate statements. And on closing statements, we'll reverse that order. For questions, I have created a kind of a random order of the candidates so that we're mixing it up in the course of doing the questions. So each candidate has 3 minutes. And our first candidate is Virginia Chang. Go ahead, Virginia.
No, I think I'm the second one.
You are correct. The first is Laura Parmer-Lohan. Apologies.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Midcoast Community Council, League of Women Voters, PCT, and all of you attending this evening. My name is Laura Parmer-Lohan. I'm a working mom, small business owner, and San Carlos City Council council member. As your supervisor, I'll ensure that we're successful in addressing the devastating effects of climate change. My leadership brings people together, and together we will address the effects of severe drought in San Mateo County, including developing programs to recycle and reclaim water for use in irrigation, farming, and landscaping, reducing traffic that intensifies climate change, protecting our open spaces and forests for future generations to enjoy. As your supervisor, I'll tackle climate-induced flooding and sea level rise. I've been endorsed by local firefighters because they know that I'll fund year-round investment in wildfire prevention and improve our coastal protections. Working together, I pledge to protect and expand healthcare. That's particularly important given this week's news. I plan to end homelessness by expanding mental health, substance abuse, job training, and housing services. I will continue to demand community-empowered, effective, accountable policing services. I want to ensure that our future generations can stay in San Mateo County, and our teachers, firefighters, and essential workers can live near where they work. I'm honored to be endorsed by the United Health Workers, Equality California, and all three preceding supervisors representing us: current board president Don Horsley, former supervisors Rich Gordon and Ted Lempert, including Carol Groom. As well, I have the sole endorsement of Planned Parenthood, Advocates Miramonte, Equality California, and National Women's Political Caucus Silicon Valley. I look forward to talking with you this evening, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Sorry, I gotta remember to unmute myself. Virginia Chang, candidate statement.
Thank you. Many thanks to the Midcoast Community Council and the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum tonight. I'm Virginia Chang, and I'm running to be our next supervisor. As a resident of the unincorporated West Menlo Park area, I've had the privilege of serving in two elected offices simultaneously: the San Mateo County Harbor District Board and the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board. I've loved serving the coast side as your elected harbor commissioner for the last 6.5 years and accomplishing many things together with coastside residents. So thank you so much for your support. I am a daughter of Chinese immigrant parents who fled communist China for a better life. Growing up in Austin, Texas, with my father in academia, my parents instilled in me the importance of hard work and education. I earned my bachelor's degree in government, minoring in economics from the University of Texas at Austin, and a master of public administration from the University of Southern California. My professional background is in financial research, investments, and business. I am the mother of 2 boys who are now young adults and working professionals and who attended public school. Education, as I said, is important to me because it's a great equalizer. My professional background is in finance, investment, and business, as I mentioned. I'm proud to have used my financial experience to make sure that your tax dollars have been spent wisely, and I'm proud to be the only candidate with a financial background that I will bring to the Board of Supervisors. As a fiscal watchdog, I fought against waste, fraud, and abuse of our tax dollars on the San Mateo County Civil Grand Jury and helped guide shared prosperity for all Californians on the California Commission for Economic Development. As the only candidate who has served San Mateo County residents living on the Bay side and the coast side, I understand the diverse needs of our district, District 3. I believe government should work for us, not stifle us, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And finally, Ray Mueller is our third candidate tonight, and I'll say again, Stephen Booker is not going to be attending.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Mueller. First and foremost, I'm a father of 2 public school children, Max, age 16, and Elle, who's 12 for the last day today. She turns 13 tomorrow. So big ton night here in our household tonight. My wife, Kristen, is my high school sweetheart, is also a middle school principal and has been served in education for decades. I received a bachelor's of science from the College of Natural Resources at UC Berkeley. I have a law degree from the Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco. While there, I worked at the Public Law Research Institute and interned at the Legislative Counsel's office in Sacramento. I've been a licensed attorney in the state of California for over 20 years. And I became a council member in Menlo Park in 2012. I've served there for almost a decade now, been elected 3 times, served as mayor twice. I also, in my background, served as chief of staff to a county supervisor, Supervisor Joe Simidian in Santa Clara County. So I have experience running a county supervisor's office. Today, I work in the emergency management and response sector. And all that provides me with an extensive background in land use planning, in emergency response, and in public policy. I've been endorsed in this race by the Sierra Club, the noted environmentalist Lenny Roberts, the Farm Bureau, a noted farm worker advocate, Dr. Belinda Arriaga. I have the sole endorsement of San Mateo County Firefighters Local 2400. So not just one city, but 9. Been endorsed by former Deputy Administrator of FEMA, Rich Serino, which will be very important to call on his expertise when we're actually looking at fire mitigation. Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, co-side Democrats, the Labor Council, the San Mateo County Democratic Party, and 62 current and former city council members serving District 3, including 10 current and former city council members from Pacifica and 9 in Half Moon Bay. I'm the only candidate here before you who has any endorsements from city council members in Pacifica. And so at the outset, I want to say I love serving the coast. I have been serving in a volunteer capacity for years now. I've worked on the San Mateo County Farm Worker Committee. I worked with Surfrider Blue Water Task Force. I've actually been doing, and there's other work as well, but my time's running quickly. So looking forward tonight to talking with you about wildfire mitigation, about drought, of not just wildfire mitigation though, but also helping people keep their insurance policies, which is a key difference. And then also want to talk about with the infrastructure impacts that we're starting to see managed and happen on the coast. Now we go ahead and address them as a community. And finally, just want to say the big difference between me and the candidates is I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually committed to putting an office on the coast. You need an office on the coast so badly, and I'm happy to talk with you about you later this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now we're ready to go into our question period. And I'll repeat again, because we've had quite a few people join since the last time I repeated it. If you've not written your questions up to this point, please do it now. You can submit it via the chat function, which you need to indicate Margaret Gator to get it to our question gatherer, or you can send it to the following email address. So Carolyn, if you can raise that again, League of Women Voters, North Central San Mateo County.questions@gmail.com. Each candidate, thank you, Carolyn. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer the questions. I will vary the order in which the candidates are called on to speak. If a question is addressed to a specific candidate, that candidate will be asked to answer first. The other candidates will also have a chance to respond. So let's get going with our first question. And we will be starting with Virginia. And then it will go to Laura and then to Ray. So the first question is, unincorporated San Mateo County's only representation comes from the Board of Supervisors. What are your priorities for unincorporated areas and specifically the Midcoast? And I'll repeat the question. Unincorporated San Mateo County's only representation comes from the Board of Supervisors. What are your priorities for unincorporated areas and specifically the Midcoast?
Thank
Starting
you
with Virginia.
Thank you for the question. like you, I'm also from the unincorporated area of West Menlo Park, and we've, in my opinion, been completely underrepresented. So by electing me, you would basically be electing your direct representative in county government. The unincorporated area is very unique because it's also very rural, but it also likes to have its local control, which is quite frankly the reason I moved into unincorporated West Menlo Park. So the big thing on the coast right now, especially with the unincorporated area, is the Sewer Authority Midcoast issue, where local control and your elected local representatives on the Montero Water and Sanitary District Board and the Granada Community Services District Board have been trying to work with the city of Half Moon Bay on dealing with sewer, water accessibility, the cost of water. And, you know, there's been a conflict. And I think that what I would do is to bring these parties together, as I have done on the Harbor Board, to make all the parties work together and quite frankly, to move on from continuing to appeal as the city of Half Moon Bay has done, because we have to provide these essential services to our residents. Infrastructure is a big deal as well. In my neck of the woods, that includes sidewalks and even streets. But more importantly, it requires your representative in the unincorporated areas to listen to you. And we have not had that, and I will be that voice.
Thank you, Virginia. Next will be Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to address this. So my priorities for the unincorporated areas of San Mateo County are to address the impacts of climate change, address our drought conditions. We don't get enough rain, and we need to think about how we manage what we do receive. Wildfire prevention, I have a track record of this in the city of San Carlos, and I can talk about that more. Sea and bay level rise, addressing homelessness and providing wraparound services. We have a real opportunity right now to realize functional zero, which is providing housing for anyone who's unhoused, making sure that they get a door. Increase our housing stocks so that our essential workers, teachers, first responders, and future generations can live in our community. Community-empowered policing. And then when it comes to the open space, I'm particularly concerned about fire risk in that area, as well as safety along the highway, making it more compatible for pedestrians, as well addressing some of the infrastructure issues with respect to sea level rise, housing, and access to healthcare. Water is also an issue, and I'd like to see us work together to make sure that we have appropriate water treatment facilities that are properly funded and access to clean water for all who need it.
Thank you. Next is Ray.
Yeah, so very quickly, what I want to do is first is I want to get an office on the coast that I staff 2 to 3 days a week. I actually have staff in it so I can meet with residents. So my priorities, I know I'm working on what you need, what people need. Just one of the things that's really important for Central Coast is evacuation routes, needs transportation improvements, access to healthcare. Drought is a huge issue, ongoing issue on the coast. When it comes to wildfire, one of the things that we really need to do is bring in the insurance companies and ask them, what do we need to actually do mitigation-wise to go ahead and save people's insurance? And then when it comes to mitigation, actually putting in the appropriate wildfire breaks, but also having a plan to replace with natural fauna and actually do so in a way which preserves the beauty of the Central Coast. The other thing that we really need to be focused on is infrastructure. The infrastructure as it's being affected by sea level rise. What's happened on the coast and folks in the Midcoast Council just can tell you is that you're constantly trying to catch up to your infrastructure improvements over time. And what I really want to do is bring together a strategic infrastructure management plan for the coast that the county helps support, where we put all the infrastructure projects down and we figure out where the funding shortfalls all are, so the county can go ahead and figure out whether or not it can backstop that or whether we need to go to the state or federal government. What happens every year right now is that at budget time, we get called by state legislators and they say, what's your best shovel-ready project? And for me, that's a little bit dog and squirrel. I think we should know what those shovel-ready projects are, the ones that move the needle the most and help the people the most. And so those are the things. And then I think access to healthcare, I think we talked about that. So those are the things I want to focus on. But the most important thing is get that office there so I can work with you arm in arm.
Okay, on to our next question. How would you address the problems of traffic on highways 1 and 92? which has increased dramatically during the pandemic and after, and I guess are we post-pandemic? I don't think so. Okay, post-endemic. Again, how would you address the problems of traffic on highways 1 and 92, which has increased dramatically during the pandemic? And we'll start with Laura.
Great, thank you. So traffic is a complicated issue, and it's connected to what I think is our jobs, housing, and balance. So that's one issue. So we need to build more housing near where people live and make sure that the community members who are working in our communities have access to housing to live there. I propose to work with our local school districts, expanding the county local school district partnerships, and identify public lands where we can build teacher housing, for example. And I've already started conversations with Jefferson High School Board of Trustee members around this idea. In addition, there's an opportunity for us to make sure that we have more farm worker housing. Rental property in Half Moon Bay for a single family home goes right now for $6,000. And on a minimum wage or up to maybe $20 an hour, that just doesn't cover that. So there's the Bay Cities farm that is up for sale that has water access. I think that would be interesting to explore. The other thing that I think we might want to consider, and particularly inspired by the conversations around roundabouts. This is a tool that's used in Europe, and I've had good fortune to experience that as a driver. It makes it quite efficient. As well, the state has recently identified the opportunity for local municipalities to lower speed limits in their particular areas. That traffic slowing, I think, could definitely help with pedestrian safety. But most importantly, I think it's about keeping traffic flow moving with the roundabouts as a potential idea, as well making sure that we can build more adequate housing stocks near where people live. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray Mueller.
Thank you. Yeah, so what we're really talking about is necessary to build a multimodal system for the coast. And so that's improving our bike routes, improving our walking routes. But then what we really need to do is actually have shuttles that move people up and down the coast, intermediate routes, and then long routes to actually get people to go ahead, express shuttles to destinations outside the coast. We need to go ahead. Like Laura, I support the idea of looking at roundabouts. I also think we need to have a long-term vision for the coast of how we're going to get people out there. So I'm the candidate in the race who's talking about looking at something like a gondola that would bring bring people over the hill and then down to that shuttle system, green long-term. A lot of what I've noticed is going out to the coast so much is that you really see it at peak times, especially on the weekends. And so as much as we want to go ahead too and really move people out, we also need to protect neighborhoods from cut through traffic, which has been a terrible problem for neighborhoods at those peak hours. And then the other thing, and it's a really simple thing, but looking at actually keeping construction limited to nighttime hours. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the coast and I've been stuck in terrible traffic, and it's just because there's construction taking place during the day, which is terrible. But it's an issue and then we need evacuation routes. Right now, if you're stuck if you're stuck on the coast and you have a medical emergency, you're in trouble. And specifically parts of the coast, you're looking at a life flight helicopter, and we have to change that. Thank you.
Virginia.
Thank you. So for sure, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, because I was the first person to even talk about roundabouts, which is in Connect the Coast. And I agree that is something that can be done to deal with traffic mitigation. But really what I think is important is to be able to work with Caltrans to increase traffic flow and to put into place infrastructure like these roundabouts, or things that will smooth out corners or limit accidents. The multiple ways of travel as well is important. I've supported the Coastal Commission's recommendation to fix the Miramar Bridge. And I think it literally is the bridge, both bike and pedestrian, that will bridge all of the communities, which is why it's absolutely important. Regarding the gondola, I think we need a solution now. $100 million is in today's dollars. Having gone through the permitting process on the coast as a harbor board commissioner, I know it takes a long time. Getting things done is what I want to do. And, that money could be spent on, putting aside putting aside a reserve for infrastructure, repair and maintenance, even the coastal trails. I mean, what we've done on the coastal trails with the Harbor District is, basically allowed environmentally friendly repairs and repairs for the trail that goes out to Maverick. So money can be spent in many different ways, but we need transportation to be fixed now, not 20 or 40 years from now.
Follow-up question to the question you just answered, with a little bit more specifics. What plan do you have for evacuation of the coast in a disaster, if it be a wildfire, earthquake, or tsunami, or some other hideous disaster? Should one of two routes become impassable? So this is a very specific question. What plan do you have for evacuation of the coast in a disaster should one of two routes become impassable? And we'll start with Ray Mueller.
And it's an excellent question. There's been, and I've talked with people about the fact that there may need to be a route that is only open during those time periods, and you could do that through fire breaks, candidly. So you could have people access fire breaks to leave the area. It's something that you talk about with emergency management planners of whether or not, as you build your fire breaks, you can go ahead and build those evacuation routes to go ahead and get around those types of things. The only other thing I'd say, just following up the last question, is actually in land use planning, you do look 20 to 40 years out when you're going ahead. You're putting together your land use plans. You have to do that in order that you can go ahead and put together the funding mechanisms in place to do so. You plan for today and you plan for tomorrow because you're constantly growing. You have to do that. And if we wait 40 years from now, then people suffer for 40 years because you haven't done the planning in advance. And the same is true with the evacuation routes. So what we need to do now is we actually need to sit down as we put in these fire breaks that we're doing for mitigation with respect to climate change, make sure that as we try to create an interlinking chain if you can, so that people can go ahead and get to those, get around those pinch points in the event of emergency. Thank you.
Virginia Chang.
So I'm familiar with the fact that the coast side has very limited ingress and egress for emergency response. And that's very, very important for the your coast side fire district and also San Mateo County Fire District or Fire Department. It's easy to say, we can put in fire breaks. There are fire breaks all over the place on the coast side, and especially in the unincorporated areas. I do think that we need to be able to partner more strongly with Stanford to do the airlifts and helicopter transportation and helicopter ambulance. But also, we're not using our waterways enough. Our harbor patrol crew, that's one of the best, they're actually providing that kind of transportation in an emergency response. Not for all of the big incidents, but we do work, the Harbor District does work with the Coast Guard. And so that type of partnership and maximizing the different types of opportunities for emergency transport is something that I would bring to the table. I've had a working relationship with the Coast Guard for, since I've been on the Harbor Board. So maximizing these opportunities to look at alternative ways of helping people is what I would bring to the table.
Next is Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Great, thank you. So I think it's very important that given the fact that there's very limited ingress and egress, Highway 1 running north to south and Highway 92 running east to west, that we are creative and innovative in our approach to disaster preparedness and planning. In the city of San Carlos, we've invested in technology to help us get an early read. For example, when there's a fire, we have thermal cameras installed and pointed toward the wildland urban interface that will provide our firefighters with early detection. That early detection can save lives because it can allow the firefighters to get in there early. In addition, Zone Haven technology is another that is rolling out throughout the county that I would like to support. And this helps forecast the direction of a fire, for example. The other thing that's really critical is our communication systems. We really do need to shore up our Wi-Fi and our internet access. There were many people during the CZU that were challenged to be communicated with during that. So we need to make sure that our notification systems are robust. and then also involve the community and working together to do evacuation drills to make sure that people have a presence of mind when an emergency, whether it's a wildfire or tsunami or some other disaster erupts. Working together, I believe that we will be able to be resilient and prepared properly for disaster. And I look forward to working with you on these initiatives.
The next question. How will you be different from previous District 3 supervisors, particularly with respect to the unincorporated areas and coastside in general? I'll repeat it. How will you be different from previous District 3 supervisors, particularly with respect to the unincorporated areas and coastside's particular issues and problems? And we start with Laura.
Great, thank you. Well, a common theme that I hear from the community members on the coast is that there's a lot of issues, and I've been learning about these, and I appreciate the conversations that I've had with everyone. But there's a general sense of people feeling left out, ignored, that their opinions don't matter. And this was a common theme that I heard coming into City Council in the city of San Carlos. As a lifelong professional when it comes to communication and somebody who knows how to lean in and work with various stakeholder groups, how I would approach this work would be to make sure that I work with you to understand what your priorities are, putting together a plan and prioritizing those projects, identifying the funding, and then working with you as we bring things to the Board of Supervisors. In addition, I will ask staff, as I have here in the city of San Carlos, to be innovative in the way that we go collect that public input. I don't think it should be limited to just the standard process. I really want to make sure that we engage in workshops. In addition, I would plan to attend your meetings, similar to the Midcoast Community Council and others, hold coffee talks, whether it's in a town hall format or just meet up one-on-one. And of course, my phone number is available to you, 650-743-0059. Call me anytime. I will come and meet you where you live and work. And if it is the will of the community, I will also open an office on the coast. I would be certainly happy to do that. I just have a feeling that we need those dollars for other capital improvements, but I'm happy to discuss that further. Thank you.
Next on this question is Ray Mueller.
Thank you. So I will be present. Number one, I'm not going to send staff to avoid conflict. I'm going to be present in your meetings. I'm going to go to your Midcoast Council meetings. I'm going to go to the meetings of the districts. I'm going to have an office on the coast. It's going to be fully staffed. I'm going to have a staff member in it. I'm going to bring county staff to that office to work with you. I've already talked with the county manager about that. He supports that idea. Representation is about relationships. I don't understand if it's the will of the public. The will of the public wants to be represented. People who are in need don't have the time to travel to Redwood City to try to find me. I mean, a family that's really in need needs to know where they can get me in a short amount of time. And so, and I learned that, frankly, from Supervisor Samedian, who had a North County office, even though the Board of Supervisors was all the way down in Santa Clara County. And that was something that was invaluable to representing the district. And frankly, coffees don't cut it. I'll have coffees, but usually what happens in a coffee, it's an hour and you don't really have the candid conversations that you need to have. We need to create a setting where when people are in trouble or they have a problem, they can come in and they can tell me that. And if they need to yell at me, they can yell at me. If they need to go ahead and explain something to me passionately that's private, they can do that. And you can't do that in a coffee setting. So those are the things I'll do. But most importantly, I'm going to bring staff to the coast. So right now, I hear from so many people on the coast that they're trying to navigate a county bureaucracy forever away, and the county, the unincorporated county doesn't have resources like the locals, like the cities do. So we're going to bring those to you if I'm elected your supervisor.
Okay, thank you. Virginia Chang.
Yes, as the only candidate from an unincorporated area, I feel your pain, whoever asked that question, because we're not listened to. And that was loud and clear when I was on the Santa Cruz Alameda de los Pogas task force to deal with traffic, where basically the residents in the unincorporated area one day found from Supervisor Horsley that their parking spaces was going to be taken away without any notice to those residents. They were not listened to. No one cared. I helped set up these meetings at our firehouse in unincorporated Menlo Park or West Menlo, which is near my house. And we started listening. And, so far that has been, it's yielded a good result. But listening is really important. Being present on the coast, I have been present here for the last 6.5 years. And, it's one thing to say that you want to have an office on the coast, which is great, but it's more important to be accessible and available. So I've developed these relationships, and I'm very proud to have done those. I've had office hours. I will continue to have office hours, and I will always be here for you. And I will always be here for the unincorporated areas. I would be the only representative on the Board of Supervisors when I'm elected to represent the unincorporated areas' interests. Thank you.
Our next question. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing system-impacted youth and families in San Mateo County? I'll repeat it. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing system-impacted youth and families in San Mateo County? And we'll start with Virginia.
I think inclusivity. My 2 sons are mixed race kids, and thankfully they have been in schools, public schools that have been very open-minded, but there are kids that are not as lucky as my children. There's different ways to be inclusive. One is to make sure there's connectivity. I believe in universal broadband. I want to fund that. It's part of infrastructure, like it should be for like your telephone, right? Inclusivity means that kids have equal access to technology so they can do their homework, which we saw was a glaring problem. And I saw that in East Palo Alto and the Bellhaven and North Fair Oaks area in particular, on my fire board on the Bay side. But also on the coast side, there are other issues too, like access to after school care, which we're seeing in the Boys and Girls Club of Pacifica. It's being threatened of shutting down. But also just facilities and after school activities. I mean, Half Moon Bay, I know, has this beautiful library, and they've partnered with the county. I think having an aquatics facility and a swimming pool, not just the high school for Half Moon Bay, but also in Pescadero, they've been waiting for a swimming pool there. Something that will provide after school activities and make kids' lives easier. I think that's important, all 3 of these things. And I want to bring that inclusivity when I'm on the board, especially as the only woman of color running. I think it's very important.
Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm deeply concerned about our high school to prison approach that we take in our country. I think that, I've spent my career in healthcare, and what I know to be true is that it's really important to make sure that the proper assessment and understanding of the problem of the youth is identified and provide that person with the appropriate resource. One of the things that we're seeing right now in our county is just an extraordinary rate of mental health issues, and we just don't have enough licensed mental health care providers, and a lot of these issues are going undetected and leading to really traumatic illness for our kids. So I think it would be important for us to adopt this new initiative that's going on called First Aid Mental Health. It's 8 hours of training, and somebody can, very similar to providing physical first aid, learn how to intervene, triage, and help that person along their way. I also think providing programs in access to STEM in our libraries, as well as opening up the door to the trades and showing youth how they can pursue a career that maybe doesn't necessarily require a 4-year degree, as well as celebrating also our 2-year colleges. I think that's a challenge where that we have a great resource in our community college district, and it would be wonderful for us to help those youth who are being challenged to get access to a brighter future.
Ray Mueller, please.
Can you read the question back one more time? I apologize.
No worries. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing system-impacted youth and families in San Mateo County?
The biggest challenge is the equity chasm between those who have and have not, that generated by the economy, and that manifests itself amongst a broad number of areas: housing, food, healthcare, healthcare split up just between medical care and then mental health care, educational, but not just, but you have facilities, you have access to teachers, you have, and then you have enrichment programs. You look at what's happening, and then it's just outside of school, the social programs. I ran a surf camp for farm worker and Latino kids in Half Moon Bay because it's such a part of the culture that they didn't have access to because of the cost of a wetsuit and the cost of a surfboard. And then if you look, if you dive deeper into all of that, there's all the things that attach to that. So broadband's another piece that Virginia mentioned, and what that means to an education, and then access to transportation. So all of these things are manifest themselves as a result of this equity chasm, or what's been called the Grand Canyon in the past. And I think that's the big challenge of the Board of Supervisors, is how do we bring resources to that, to all of the different stakeholders who are trying to address that and build equity within the system.
Thank you. Next question. Will you commit to getting the interest-bearing Midcoast Parks mitigation fees to finally begin to build a much-needed community center for the unincorporated areas to use for community meetings, after school activities, and most importantly, as an evacuation center? So I'll repeat the question as it's got a lot of content. Will you commit to getting the interest-bearing Midcoast Parks mitigation fees to finally begin to build a much-needed community center for the unincorporated areas to use for the community meetings, after-school activities, and most importantly, as an evacuation center? And the first to answer the question will be Ray Mueller.
So I'll be candid. As I sit here right now, I don't know why I wouldn't commit to doing that, but there may be a reason. But if those are what I will commit to do is certainly to work with the community to bring, number one, there needs to be an evacuation center. There's no doubt there needs to be a shelter center, and I know that that there's been work on building the recreation community center. So I will commit to working on that as well and bringing that to fruition, and then, to the extent that there are fees that need to be collected, if the county, I candidly just don't know the background on that issue, but if the county are holding those and that's something that should be within the district, then I'll make sure that happens. But I need to understand a little bit more about that question before I can say to everyone, I will commit, because I don't know the background as to why they're haven't been made accessible yet.
Next is Virginia.
Yes, I will commit to that. As I said, as a resident of the unincorporated areas, we don't have a lot of the resources and facilities that the people who've in the cities have. And I've seen things get closed down in Montera and even Moss Beach. I mean, if you look at the clinic up in Moss Beach, Seton, it could be better. So yes, in terms of making this an evacuation center, I would also say that it could even be a place for a makeshift clinic if needed. In terms of an after-school community center, that would be fantastic. It could be, if the Boys and Girls Club in Pacifica needs a satellite area, that could be another place for them to come to. But really what it comes down to is resources that are available for the unincorporated areas. And so what I bring to the table as an unincorporated resident is this broader picture of things, not just a very singular, even though we have a singular focus on essential services. I look at the broader picture with how we can collaborate with the cities and what the county interests and needs are. And I'm one of those residents in this area. So yes, I would actually very much would love to make this community center come to fruition.
Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Yes, I believe in the power of community centers, and it's one that could be designed with many uses. And I'd be in favor of working with the community on getting this vision developed and realized. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Highway 1 at Surfers Beach is eroding and may be undermined by 2025. Surfers Beach is disappearing. When is someone going to do something concrete so that we're not trying to solve a problem when the highway is impassable and the beach cannot be used? And first to answer this question will be Virginia Chang. And I'll repeat it. Highway 1 at Surfers Beach is eroding and may be undermined by 2025. Surfers Beach is disappearing. When is someone going to do something concrete so that we're not trying to solve a problem when the highway is impassable and the beach cannot be used?
Well, so Surfers Beach, it's kind of a two-part question. One is dealing with Highway 1 and the other one is actually dealing with Surfers Beach. So with regard to beach accessibility and having a beach, dredging, I think, is going to be very important. It's something that the Harbor District is working on. We're actually in the last throes of dealing with dredging. We're just trying to kind of mitigate the eelgrass issue, which ironically enough came because the harbor hasn't been dredged. With regard to Highway 1, I know that, there's been talk about moving it back. And that's always a possibility. But in all honesty, that's something that I would want to work with Caltrans with, because I don't think that it's going to be that easy to move this back. And it is one of the few ways of going north and south for ingress and egress. And it is as I would call it, a primary emergency response route.
Next is Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Thank you. I'm a proponent of the One Shoreline program. This is a county-sponsored program that includes appointed members, elected officials, that's identified half a dozen or so capital-intensive projects throughout San Mateo County that are in need of improvement due to impacts of climate change. And this area that you're describing is, in fact, one of those particular areas. The goal behind One Shoreline is to work collaboratively to identify local funding sources and have those married with state and federal funding resources. We've done this successfully in the city of San Carlos when it came to fire risk mitigation measures, where the city council appropriated a few $100,000 and were able to get those dollars matched through state and federal funding for a total of $500,000 to $600,000 to clear fuels from our parks and hire goats. So in a similar fashion, One Shoreline does the very same thing. And I would be looking to continue this work and expand on it as we move forward, and working with the community and the number of disparate agencies that are impacted in this area: the federal government, the state, the Coastal Commission, and the local municipalities and community advisory boards. Thank you.
Ray Mueller.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, because I used to surf Surfers Beach before I hurt my neck, and there are already times of the day that there's quite a bit of Surfers Beach underwater because of and so what I'd say is this really goes back to what I talked about earlier about really needing to create an infrastructure strategic plan for the coast, because what happens is when the county supervisor puts all of those infrastructure projects onto the grid, you can go ahead and see what is missing funding and where you need to go get it. Do you need to go get it from the Army Corps of Engineers? Do you need to have a project ready where you're going to the state? Who's managing it at the state? Is the money coming from Caltrans? Where is it? And right now what happens is there's so many different special districts looking at different projects. It's really easy for one project to just sort of wait until someone grabs it. And I don't think that's really effective planning. I think often that is dog and squirrel planning. You end up working on what the public comes and says, oh, we got to work on this today. But you haven't really caught up to what your CIP projects are over time that you need to be investing in and planning for. And so that's a project that I tell you would immediately go into the infrastructure plan. We'd be immediately talking to the state, and we'd be talking with stakeholders there in the unincorporated coast about whether or not you want to pull it back. Because if you do pull that road back, then you actually can potentially have beach again. Because if without pulling it back, you probably aren't going to have beach again, because you can only dredge so much. If the water comes up over it and pulls it out constantly, then you're just not going to have a beach there. And there are certainly portions of Surfer Beach where that is the case now. So anyway, I'm out of time.
Sometimes it's hard to keep within the time limits. We're going to go back to a topic we talked about briefly, because there's been a couple of drill down questions that have come through. And it goes like this. So there is a park in El Granada by the name of Quarry Park. It's basically a eucalyptus forest that's surrounded by community. And the community has been trying to get the Board of Supervisors, the county, to allocate funds to clear more of the forest before there's a tragedy. This forest is similar to the forest that exists in the Oakland Hills when the fire tragedy happened there. Will you promise to allocate enough funds to really tackle the fire danger, especially the area that borders the community, and also help us with a safe and solid evacuation plan during an emergency? And any other, brainstorming plans that you might have to address this kind of specific issue. And we'll start with Laura.
Great, thank you. So I've met with many of the community members in El Granada around this particular issue, and there are many different viewpoints on it. And when we look at that thick of eucalyptus, it is huge, and the cost to clear that, my understanding is just it's just enormous. So my proposal for how we address this is, again, going back to my example that I used for fire and prevention measures and early detection, is let's be thoughtful and design a strategy that will accomplish multiple objectives. One, making sure that we reduce the fire risk. So, for example, that could include a clearance behind homes of about 100 feet or so, potentially thinning out areas. Again, I'm not the expert, so I want to consult with the experts to understand how to do this. But I think more importantly, let's have a robust process of community input and making sure that all voices are heard. In addition, I understand there's one way in and out of El Granada. I've been in and out of that many times, and we also need to take a look at that as well. Again, going back to disaster preparedness and evacuation drills, let's get a focused effort with respect to El Granada and keep that community safe and thriving. Thank you.
Next will be Ray Mueller.
So the answer is yes, but in full transparency, I think the question really doesn't question. Within the question, you have to analyze what's the danger. And so the answer is yes, I will. And I think we need to put in the fire breaks and build in the evacuation route through those fire breaks. But I also think that it's really important for the county to be putting together a plan to replace after they cut down. And really, that's bringing in natural fauna. That's really figuring out what the plan is for replanting. And because the real crux of climate change in this area is that as you cut down those trees, you're actually going to be speeding up climate change, because what happens as you cut down those trees is that area becomes more accessible to wind and more accessible to sun, and it actually dries out that land and creates a faster fire risk in those areas where you haven't cut. And so what you really need to do is have a well put together plan where you're thinning where appropriate, you've created your fire breaks, but you're also replanting to protect that soil and protect that water moisture content. Thank you.
Virginia Chang.
Yes, I would commit to that. I really don't think we need a community survey to understand that the public is very concerned about wildfires in our county parks. Quarry Park is one that's very close to a residential area, as is Edgewood Park. So it's not just one park within the county park system, it's many parks. And having walked and hiked these parks multiple times, I've seen just how much danger our homes are in, and just the community, the surrounding community. So cleaning vegetation is important. We have to work with Coastside Fire, which is actually a contracted agency with CAL FIRE. They're the experts. We have defensible space. I think there was something that CAL FIRE had to put in place where you had to have 150 feet of defensible space. But really, it's going to be about vegetation management. I agree with Ray about native plants being planted and replaced. But at the same time, we need to understand, where the water sources are, and to make sure that the water infrastructure is good enough and strong enough, like water pressure, to be able to meet those needs, if it's suppression needs. But really, it's going to come down to preparedness. And Coastside CERT is probably, in my opinion, one of the best prepared CERTs in the entire county with, I think, 300 deployable certs and 1,900 on their email list. So they're very prepared for helping neighbors, and not just in wildfires, but even in other natural disasters like a tsunami that hit about 4 months ago. So yes, I would support vegetation management and cleaning. Thank you.
Okay. Well, got another question about traffic, but it's got a different twist this time. So we're going to circle back yet again, because it's important to COSI. What relationship do you see as a supervisor representing the COSI? Do you see what relationship representing COSI do you see having with local law enforcement? And the question is asked because the difficulties the coast has been facing with traffic, parking in neighborhoods, on the slide, tourists walking along one, going to Gray Whale, requests falling on deaf ears, and residents basically told that it wasn't their job and referring to them to the sheriff. Is it your job to help out, to mitigate problems like this? Do you see yourself coordinating with the sheriff on the coast? I'm not sure if I can paraphrase all this into a simple rephrase of the question. I think we have so the coast side has particular problems, and they were exacerbated during the pandemic. We have two sources of solution potentially: our supervisor and local law enforcement. Okay, how are you guys going to work together to help us to solve these problems? And we'll start with Ray Mueller.
Yeah, it absolutely is the role of the supervisor and the budgetary capacity of the supervisor to make sure that resources are adequately funded and being deployed appropriately on the coast. And that's something that I've done as a Menlo Park City Council member in my city. I've advocated for proper staffing levels and worked when residents came to me and said, "Ray, we just don't have enough traffic enforcement. We don't have enough on different issues," and did that. And then also utilized technology as well in order to go ahead and to go ahead and help with enforcement. So yes, the answer, the quick answer is yes. And I've been endorsed by my Police Officers Association, local law enforcement, and by two former police chiefs in this race, because I've been able to work effectively with them to both build transparency, but also work with the community to enforce laws and keep our community safe.
Virginia Chang.
Yes, so I'm probably the only candidate who's actually had to work with the sheriff's office during the time of an emergency called the pandemic, because the Harbor District had to make sure that the area was safe around Pillar Point Harbor, since so many visitors were coming in from literally all over the Bay Area. So we've had to work with the sheriff's office. So I've already done that as an elected representative of the coast, and I will continue to do that on the Board of Supervisors. I absolutely think it's the role of the supervisor, but also not just the supervisor's role, but also other elected officials on the coast. And I was very happy that we were able to work with the sheriff in terms of safety, not just like with traffic accidents, but also making sure that we were socially distanced, and it's with the county as well. So having worked with the sheriff's office, I know that I will be able to do that collaboratively because I've already done it. I'm not even sure I'm answering all of the question. Kathy, it was a really long question, but when it comes to the safety aspect of this, working together is something I've done with the county and the sheriff and the Harbor District and the community. And that's something that I will continue to do. And quite frankly, I'm the only one who has done it and will bring to the table.
And Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Thank you. I respectfully refute my opponent's statement that she's the only one to work with the sheriff. In fact, San Carlos contracts directly with the sheriff's department. So I have a very close collaboration with them. And in the city of San Carlos, safety is absolutely prioritized. And I believe that there's a number of strategies that we can deploy. It sounds like what I'm hearing is that there's some dissatisfaction with how traffic is managed and the overall safety profile. So things that we've done is very simple, low tech, is pull in a sign, put it next to the road, and that makes drivers aware of their speed. So that's one example. The other example is adding ghost cars to serve as a deterrent. This is an unstaffed car that is parked in an area that's in a safe location, and it just makes people, think twice about their behaviors when they're behind the wheel. The other thing that we've done successfully is have safety events. So from time to time, they'll impart, DUI programs, informing the community to make them aware and have a focused effort around that. And then the last component is enforcement. So if there's not enough resources for enforcement, I think that's something that we need to look at and make sure that if laws are being broken, we need to make sure that we have a presence. And I would lean into all of this because safety is number one. Thank you.
I think we've got time for about 4 more questions, just so that you've got a idea as to when this is going to end. So your next question, I only go where my dog can go. It's the same for many of the 8,500 licensed dogs with dog owners between Montara and Half Moon Bay. I would like to visit Purisima Creek Open Space Preserve, for example, with my dog. Will you help make San Mateo County more dog friendly? Virginia Chang Karali. I only go where my dog goes.
I love my dog. I love my dog. And we have a new dog, and he's been my companion for the last 4 months. We had to put to sleep our 19-year-old dog. But yes, I think that right now what the problem is there's a county ordinance that's been put in place that's about 100 years old, where the default is that you're not allowed to go to a county park with your dog even on leash. So I would definitely want to overturn that ordinance, so that at least when you go to a park, a county park, the default is you can bring your dog on leash. And so let me just give you an example. My husband and I did the Take a Hike Challenge, and we walked and hiked 14 county parks. And I always assumed that dogs were allowed to be in these parks on leash. And we brought our at that time 18-year-old dog and to this, thinking we could walk her, and we couldn't leave her in the car. And I was just so dismayed. Out of the 14 parks, I think only 2 allowed dogs on leash, and that's just unconscionable. Dogs have been actually very helpful to people in need during the pandemic, whether it's a service dog or a therapy dog, and they should be able to be with their parents or their family. So I would I would want to overturn that ordinance right away.
Laura.
Great, thank you. Well, I appreciate this question. One of the things that I'm also a dog owner. So Charlie, the golden retriever, is a member of our household, and one of the laziest golden retrievers I've ever had. But he's super cuddly, and he does a great job taking care of us. So the pandemic really showed all of us how important the outdoors is. It enabled our family to reconnect with the many activities that we enjoy doing, and I think there's an opportunity to take a look holistically at our parks, and understanding that many people like to go mountain biking, and there's many different forms of biking now. There's gravel bikes, and there's pump bikes, hiking, horseback riding, walking our dogs, that type of thing. So I'd like to make sure that we have a holistic plan that incorporates all the various different activities people enjoy, and at the same time being mindful of the many challenges that our environment is facing. For example, on some of these areas, there are some sensitive habitats. So we just have to figure out how to strike that balance. And I'm willing to have that conversation and work with the community to identify increased access depending on what people's enjoyments are. Thank you.
Ray Mueller.
I have a dog too. His name is Rocky. So we all have dogs, and I definitely will work very hard to make sure that people have access to parks with dogs. But as Laura said, on balance, there are some places that don't make. If there's endangered species present, it doesn't make sense to have a dog there. But there are certainly lots of places where it makes a lot of sense to be able to bring your dog. And I think that the key too is, I think that what's really important is to have places where you can have dogs on leash, and also create spaces where dogs can be off leash. And that's something that I've done during my 10 years on council, is try to create dog parks where dogs can just be off leash and run and play and be healthy. And that's something that I think we also have to do, not just create spaces for them to be with us, but create spaces where they can really thrive. And we can enjoy that with them. So, but yes, as a county supervisor, I will work on those things with the community.
Okay, next question. We've been, actually, Coastside has been put in a new congressional district, District 16, which is the district of Anna Eshoo currently, which is also up for election in November. How will you work with the newly elected Congress, I think the right word is congressperson, to ensure that our area, which is significantly different than the areas traditionally covered in District 16, namely Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Gatos, different from both an equity point of view as well as lifestyle and working class. How would you work with the newly elected congressperson for District 16? And we'll start with Laura.
Great, thank you. Well, I understand Anna is running, and with this, and I think there's 6 other or 7 other candidates in that particular race. But it's all about having conversation, building that relationship. I know Anna, and I've heard her speak about her concerns about the coast. So it appears to be versed in those issues, and I know she represented it some time ago. When it came to if there were to be someone new elected, it would be a question of sitting down and working with them and highlighting for them, what all these various issues are that we're facing as a community. I have the good fortune of having spent many months on a listening tour, actively hearing community members. I have lots of inputs that I would work to synthesize. And again, if the community is interested in my service, working with all of you to put together that plan where we prioritize what needs to get accomplished and finding those resources. And again, where we need additional funding, work with that congressperson to identify additional sources of funding so that the projects can get realized. Thank you.
Ray Mueller.
I've had the good fortune of working with Congresswoman Eshoo for the last 10 years since I was first elected. She's endorsed me in this race. We have a great relationship. I know we'll be able to work together very well. We've already talked about what it would mean to have her in Congress and me representing the coast. Congresswoman Eshoo was key, for instance, in the creation of Moonridge, of the farm worker housing there in Half Moon Bay. She is very excited about representing the coast again, should she win the race, which I think she will. And she's been spending a lot of time going out to meet with city council members and elected representatives up and down the coast. So we'll work very well together and are very excited about doing so to help bring equity to the coast and help move projects forward on the coast that are really necessary.
Virginia Chang.
Thank you. I think that environmental protection and emergency response are 2 very important things that the federal government can help us with. Last year, when I was Harbor Board President, we actually did a resolution to ban new offshore drilling, and Congresswoman Eshoo supported that and wrote me a very, very sweet letter saying that she supported our efforts. So that was very complimentary in terms of effort, as well as just a very nice note from her. But also for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, we are the lead agency for one of the 8 California or FEMA task forces. This is California Task Force 3. It's an elite team of emergency responders from Santa Cruz County all the way up to San Francisco that deals with natural disasters and terrorism. And so we've worked very closely with the federal government, including Congresswoman Eshoo, just to make sure that we've got funding and that the grants from FEMA. I mean, we've always accepted this as a fire district, and it's a resource that has helped the county when the San Marino gas line exploded, and we were able to deploy those resources. And even with the CZU lightning fire, which just wiped out the South Coast, we were able to be prepared with the La Honda Fire Brigade to allow some of these resources to be deployed. I'm also on the Farm Worker Affairs Coalition for the county, so clean water, farm worker housing, funding to protect climate change and wildfires, especially in these rural areas, are very important. These are some of the things I've already been doing as a fire board director and a harbor board commissioner, and we've worked very closely with Anna Eshu's office, and I will continue to do that.
Okay, so this is going to be the last question of the night. I apologize for any questions that the audience felt were not asked, but I will be forwarding your questions to the candidates, hoping that they address them on their preferred media. Here's the last question. What question do you wish had been asked in this forum? And then answer it. What question do you wish had been asked in this forum? And then go ahead and answer it. Ray Mueller. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
I'm thinking, there really wasn't a question about stabilizing the economy on the coast, which I think is so important. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of in this race is I've been endorsed by the Farm Bureau, by farm worker advocates, and by environmentalists. And I think right now on the coast that we all love so much is threatened right now because by drought, but also because you have second and third generation farmers and ranchers who are really struggling in order to move forward. And those open space, there's only so much money that post has. And so what's happening is you have these second generation farmers and ranchers deciding they don't want to do it anymore. And they'd rather go out and work construction, and you have labor shortages. And so one of the things that I worked really hard on this race is trying to figure out how do we stabilize that coastal economy to really preserve the way of life that people enjoy so much and the quality of life that people enjoy so much on the coast. We do that first by raising the quality of life of farm workers, by providing great services, affordable housing, so we have a stable workforce. We work with our with our farmers to go ahead and provide stable water. Water is such an issue for them right now. I can't express it enough. And so we work with them in order to make those farms and ranches work. One of the ways we do that is by building a giant farmers market just south of Half Moon Bay. We brand that. We go ahead and give people the opportunity to understand when they're purchasing farm fresh from San Mateo County, and then we protect our environment and sustain it for future generations. Thank you.
Virginia, Chang, last question.
Thank you. So I think that the question I wish that had been asked is, what have you done on the coast that you're most proud of? And there are a couple of things I'd like to highlight. One is local economic development. I was on the part of the Coastside Recovery Initiative when I was the Harbor Board president, and we were trying to, figure out how we can keep our small businesses intact. The Harbor District is an enterprise district. About 35 to 40% of our revenues come from small businesses like the Catch Joanne or the Maverick Surf Shop. So, anything that we can do to support our small businesses. And also that includes our fishing industry, our commercial fishing industry. The Harbor Board approved opening up a fish market. We're in the process of getting all the permits, and we're looking forward to that. The Farm Bureau has already approached me about possibly working with us on that, but, we'll see. We have to get the permits first from the Coastal Commission. The economic development piece is very important to me. I was on the California Commission for Economic Development for 7 years, and I know what it means to have revenue flow into our cities and our special districts. Good government, I'd be very proud of that. The Harbor District Board has worked together to make sure that good governance has prevailed, and we've been able to do a lot of great projects and to make sure that our tax dollars are spent wisely, and quite frankly, to make sure that the behavior, the decorum for the Harbor Board has been positive and being governed ethically. So those are two things I'm very proud of, and it's been in the news. So I'm glad that I've had Coastside support.
And finally, Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Thank you. So for me, I would appreciate a conversation around our current drought conditions. The drought continues to persist and elongate. I grew up in Southern California, which was an arid climate that was rather dry. And when I moved to Northern California to attend university, what I noted was just there was a fall and a winter, and it rained, and there were steady rains and there were frequent rains, and the hills would turn green, and they'd be green all the way through up and until summer. But that's not true anymore. Now, Northern California weather is a lot like Southern California weather. And in fact, when you look at, for example, Hoover Dam, the lake is gone. It's back down to a river. And if that drops down another 20 or so feet, 37% of the electrical capacity in this Southwest region will be lost. In the Midcoast, 75%, from what I understand, of the water comes from SFPUC, but when it's only available. So what happens when it's not? The rest of the water comes from creeks and wells, about 25%, but those are under stress because of the lack of rainwater. And I think it's time for us to start having an earnest conversation about water storage, water capture, recycling, reclamation. We've done some initiatives here in the city of San Carlos around this, asking new developers of commercial projects, for example, to lay down purple pipe to capture water for irrigation purposes. I think that there's a lot we can do and explore this because water is a vital resource. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for the question period, and we'll go into closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statement, and we'll reverse the order from that of the opening statements. So that means we'll go first with Ray Mueller, then Virginia Chang, and finally Laura Parmer-Lohan. So we'll start with Ray Mueller at 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say thank you all for listening to us, for being interested in this campaign. I'm very grateful to the League and Midcoast Council for putting this on. Just real quickly, sharing a little bit about my background. When I was a kid, I grew up in a family of 7. When I was very young, 4th or 5th grade, young enough to know something was happening, but old enough to know something was happening, but young enough to have no power. My dad suffered a disability. I watched my mom go back to work, try to figure out how she was going to make the house work. And that really, that process really instilled on all of our family members a desire to try to make the world a better place, try to help people. And so, I grew up living in a garage, a converted garage with 2 brothers. I remember doing pull-ups on the pipe. And it's one of the reasons why I find myself compelled to do public service. And in this race, spent a long background of building that resume so I could be good at this job. From the 10 years on council, from the training in law and public policy to working for a supervisor, learning to become a chief of staff. And again, just want to share those endorsements with you because I think they reflect that work and the readiness for the job. The sole endorsement of the Sierra Club, the Farm Bureau, noted farm worker advocate, Dr. Belinda Arriaga, the sole endorsement of the San Mateo County Firefighters Local 2400, which is 9 different fire groups. Former Deputy Administrator of FEMA, Rich Serino, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, co-side Democrats, the Labor Council, sole endorsement of the San Mateo County Democratic Party, 62 current and former city council members serving District 3. So serving this district have looked at this race and endorsed me, and 20 current and former city council members serving District 3 who are women, and then Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. So very confident that we'll be able to bring resources to the coast. Thank you.
And next will be Virginia Chang.
Take myself off mute. Sorry about that. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you about the things that I have done and will bring to the table. Someone who has been a part of the coastside community and represented our interests for the last 6.5 years, I think it's safe to say that we deserve someone who is an independent thinker and a courageous leader, someone who will represent us and not special interests or be an extension of someone else's legacy, someone who can get things done and has gotten things done for the coast. I am that person. And I have been for the last 6.5 years when we have worked together to accomplish things on the coast and in the harbor. I'm proud of the work that we have done together. And the wonderful employees I've worked with also agree. I'm not one to tout my endorsements. I will say that I'm very proud of 2 endorsements, people I've worked with. I've gotten the sole endorsement of our Harbor Patrol crew, Operating Engineers 3, Local 3, and the Menlo Park firefighters. I've been on the fire board for the last 10 years, serving my 3rd term, and I've been on the harbor board for the last 6.5 years. I've worked with all of these wonderful employees. I ask you to continue working with me to make our county and the coast side and our district even greater and more inclusive. As the only woman of color, I think diversity is very important, racial diversity and diversity of thought, more importantly. And that's what I will bring to the table. Ballots are being mailed on May 9th. So vote for me so that I can vote for you on the board, or work for you on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much. And I humbly ask for your vote.
And finally, Laura Parmer-Lohan.
Thank you so much. Thank you to MCC for initiating this conversation tonight, League of Women Voters for orchestrating it, PCT, and all the attendees. I believe I provide the unique, multifaceted perspective of a working mom, small business owner, corporate manager, and elected official. These are lived experiences that are real. Lived experiences matter. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I've experienced that allows me to be particularly empathetic to my neighbors who are historically excluded. I've been left out, excluded, and ridiculed. I know what that feels like. I bring a vision of inclusivity and welcoming inclusivity to the work. I know how to solicit input, identify needs, and build and implement plans that provide measurable results. I understand the priorities and concerns of my neighbors across the district: wildfire abatement, sea level rise management, impacts of drought, addressing homelessness, importance of increasing access to affordable housing, childcare, and healthcare. I'm a consensus builder who readily initiates and nurtures the relationships of meaning, value, and respect. And in fact, every single one of my council colleagues has endorsed me in this race, the people I work closely with on the front lines in San Carlos. I'm trusted to carry out the responsibilities of this job by the current and 2 immediate office holders, Supervisor Horsley, former supervisors Rich Gordon and Ted Limpert, Carol Groom. In addition, Equality California, Planned Parenthood, Advocates Miramonte, National Women's Political Caucus, Silicon Valley, know what's at stake right now. And we need more women in elected office to carry this voice forward. That lived experience matters. I'm an experienced legislator who has delivered results that benefits all members of my community. As mayor, I was able to successfully work with and direct staff, colleagues, and constituents and deliver in a COVID world, not only our safety programs, but also big projects. I hope I hope to earn your vote. I want this job, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, candidates, for your statements and answers to the questions. This was a long hour and a half, and you did a great job. Your time is valuable, and we, the League of Women Voters, are grateful that you decided to share your views and opinions with those in the audience tonight and those that will be viewing the recording before June 6th. Margie is going to be doing a screen share so we can give you some information about voting. As Virginia stated, ballots are going out on the 9th. And so we go into presentation mode, so we're a little bit bigger. Okay, so there's 3 ways that you can vote. You can mail it in with the postage paid envelope. You can use a county drop box, and those are available across the county, or you can visit a vote center. And for locations of the drop boxes and the vote centers, you can go to smcacre.org/elections. And oh yes, don't forget to sign your ballot. New, okay, it's been new for a couple of years now, is this nifty tool that gives you some information of where's your ballot once you've mailed it. So you can track your ballot after you mail it. So you sign up for this at this link. If you just do a Google search on where's my ballot, it'll take you there. And then you can choose as to whether to receive texts, emails, or voice calls on the progress of your ballot. It actually is a pretty slick thing. It's nice to know that your ballot has actually been counted after you've mailed it. More information here. Your sample ballot is going to be mailed to registered voters unless you've decided to receive it as an e-copy. Official voter information is in the voter guide. There's an easy voter guide as well. And then the League of Women Voters has created this website, Voters Edge, which has candidate information on it. And is another valuable tool to get information before voting. And then finally, you can visit our website, again, the acronym, lwvncsmc.org. And we've got all these links are there. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, and membership is open to both men and women of voting age. So join us. If you're interested in helping in your community with forums such as this, go to the League of Women Voters website. And again, thank you, candidates. Thank you, audience. Let's give the candidates and the audience and the League of Women Voters a big hand. And vote, please. It's very, very important. And I wish you a good night. Okay, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.